We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including all kinds of great playoff action. A recap from the last day. Of course, we saw the Battle of Ontario be extended to Game 6. We saw our first team be eliminated with the New Jersey Devils. Great games as well between the Oilers and Kings, Vegas and Minnesota as well. Plus, we have all kinds of offseason speculation around teams like the Vancouver Canucks, around Elias Pettersson. We learned more about Rick Tocchet and his decision to leave. Some talk there around what he would have liked to have seen happen. Could the Montreal Canadiens move Patrick Laine? The future of Sidney Crosby. We have some more finalists for NHL Awards. A big leak potentially regarding the new team name for the Utah franchise. Plus, Taylor Hall has signed a contract extension. We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots here to discuss in today's video. Let's start by looking at last night's playoff action. All kinds of great games going on. We get our first team eliminated, another series extended, and of course we have a pretty epic setup for Game 6 between a couple of really competitive Western Conference series. So let's start first with Carolina and New Jersey. Unfortunately for the Devils, they become the first team eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs, losing to the Canes in Game 5, so going down 4-1. The sad part about this as well is that the Devils had a really hot start to this game and actually had a 3-0 lead at one point by the end of the first period. Unfortunately, they lost 5-4 in overtime, letting the Canes get back into it. Sebastian Aho had the overtime series clinching winner. So another big goal for him. On the power play at that. I feel terrible for Dawson Mercer, who ended up taking a double minor penalty in the overtime session to allow the Canes to have that opportunity. So certainly, like I said, just an errant stick. Got to be careful. It was definitely a penalty. I think it was the right call. I know in overtime you don't want to really see opportunities like that given, but there are certain things the refs just can't let go, like a puck over glass, stick to the face, especially if it draws blood or something. Like it's it's one of those situations that the refs really had no choice, at least in my opinion. So Rod Brind'Amour actually makes history with this series win as well. He is the first coach in NHL history to have at least one NHL playoff series win in his first 7 seasons behind the bench. So clearly, for somebody who didn't have really a lot of coaching experience, had obviously been an assistant a little bit there before taking the head coaching gig, and he mainly took that gig because the owner just seemed to really like him after Tom Dunham bought the team and got to know the existing staff and whatnot. Like, I'm not sure Brind'Amour even really had immediate ambitions to get into that job, but obviously started thinking about it. The owner really liked him, thought he would be good, and certainly, look how much of a coach this guy has become and the amount of success. I know they haven't gotten through to the Stanley Cup final or won a Stanley Cup, but just that consistency, I'm sure it's really helped with the fan base and just really kind of, put that franchise, which at one point was shaky, and there were rumors about, the team moving and all that. Those are all long behind us now. Much more stable position, and the Canes again advance to the second round, where they await the winner of the Washington Capitals Montreal Canadiens series, which is having Game 5 tonight. The Canadiens are trying to stave off elimination and force a Game 6 in Montreal. The game actually just started not long ago before I hit record here. Alexander Ovechkin has scored an early power play goal about midway through the first period to give the Capitals an early 1-0 lead, but that's where things stand at least as I stand here to record. I can't obviously keep track of the game while I'm keeping it going here, but obviously lots of other games last night. We saw Vegas take a 3-2 series lead over Minnesota. An interesting game there. Another overtime game with Brett Howden getting the overtime winner. We saw a change in goal with the Wild, not because the coaching staff wanted to or the Gustafsson was playing bad, but he did come out after the second period. They said he was leaving the game due to illness, so Fleury comes off the bench, which you never know, right? I mean, we know this is his last season. Is that his last playoff appearance? We don't know. Hopefully, we'll see what the status is for Gustafsson, if he can get back into the net for Game 6 or not. So, it's undetermined right now if Fleury's going to be needed further or what have you. But at least, he get to make another appearance, which is always good. Unfortunately, they didn't pick up the win. The Oilers had an absolute stomping on the LA Kings. The score was 3-1, but it really could have been 7-1, 8-1. Darcy Kemper had to be amazing to keep that close. The LA Kings did score the first goal, but really Edmonton completely took over and never looked back. Even that goal that they did score, There was never really a point in the game, I think, where the Oilers really felt uncomfortable. Calvin Pickard gave them a good chance. He didn't have to be amazing. He just had to make the saves when he had the shots. I think they only had 21 or 22 shots total, where the Oilers had well over 40. That's 3 straight victories now after losing the first 2 on the road in Los Angeles. The Oilers have bounced back. They've certainly made some adjustments. Jim Hiller has not been able to make adjustments the last couple of games. And he's being out-coached right now for sure. Like I said, you go back, for me, the series turning point is that stupid coach's challenge in Game 3. They let the Oilers off the mat and gave them a chance. If they don't make that move and the Oilers don't get that power play to take that lead right after, it could be an entirely different series. But between that and just the fact that they're not playing a lot of their depth players, we've had games where their 5 and 6 defensemen are playing like 2 minutes or 5 minutes. The fourth line's barely playing. Last night they had Brent Clark in. He was probably the 5th highest played defenseman. At least it was a little bit more. I think he played, I can't remember exactly, but I want to say it was around 10 minutes. It was a little bit more closer to what a third pair defenseman would normally play. But their number 6 guy, I think, which I believe was Spence, not barely playing. Like, you can't, it's too much to ask. That I think the Kings are getting worn down. They're getting exhausted. The Oilers just keep coming wave after wave after wave. I'd be shocked at this point if the Kings come back and force a Game 7. I think they might be done. And to be completely honest, if I'm ownership there, if that happens and they don't win this series, that's 4 straight years where you lost to the same team. So you knew going into all these series for especially the last couple of years, you had a pretty good idea who your opponent was going to be. You often see teams kind of make up their team to be prepared to beat that team. They kind of learn their lessons over the years. This never happened. It's never happened. This is a different team. The Oilers have had the same issues year after year. Questionable goaltending. Nothing high-end there. The decor has its moments. Like, they rely on high-end skill and a deeper forward group. And, I don't know. To me, if I would seriously consider, if the Kings lose this series, a complete regime change. Start with Blake and Hiller and just wipe it clean and start fresh. They do have a good team. This team is just not playing to its potential. So we'll see what happens. Of course, the Battle of Ontario carries on as well. The Ottawa Senators go into Toronto with I'm going to say a fairly stunning 4-0 win to quiet the crowd in Scotiabank Arena, which is also, nicknamed the Library for a reason. But certainly they seemed a little bit loud to start, like during introductions and all that. But then, I don't know, I just found the crowd wasn't really into it. I know they didn't have a lot to cheer for, but you would think that for the large part of the game, it wasn't out of reach. It was a 4-0 game. But really, the Sens didn't score their first goal until, I think it was sometime early in the second. And then, of course, they had that shorthanded goal from Dylan Cousins not long after to make it 2-0. But even late in the third period, it's still 2-0. The game is within reach. And, you didn't hear a lot of chanting from the crowd to really encourage the team and keep them going. Some of the efforts, though, from the top Leaf players, to me, was not nearly good enough. They don't seem to have a sense of urgency. They don't seem to have that killer instinct. It's still not there. Marner, to me, didn't have a great game at all. I found that he was kind of flopping all over the place, trying to sell calls instead of focusing more on using his skill to put the puck in the net. It was just wasn't good enough. William Nylander, again, we all know there's parts of Willie's game that are just not good at times. Highly skilled player, one of the best in the league, but getting him to back check and do the other parts of the game, it's just not going to happen. And on that shorthanded goal, Dylan Cousins starts at the goal line. He's pressuring Austin Matthews, who's behind the goal. He comes out from behind the net on the goal line. Makes a pass. Wasn't a great pass. Adam Gaudette picks it off. And if you look at the still frame, Cousins is on the goal line. You've got Tavares, who's further back than him. And then Nylander further on the opposite wall, a little further back as well. And, of course, Marner's at the point, so he's having to play defense now. And Cousins just turns on the Jets and goes hard. And he gets by Tavares and Nylander like nothing. And gets the pass from Gaudette. Boom, shorthanded goal, 2-0 Sens. Like, the back check and the effort was embarrassing. And then on the empty netter that Stützle got, Claude Giroux, who, trust me, Claude Giroux's had a fantastic career. He's still playing at a pretty good level for his age. He is not fast. Giroux has never been accused of being a speedster, even when he was younger. He was the first one down the ice to beat out the icing during the 6-on-5. So the icing is waved off. Timmy is following him down the ice, and then there's two leaves. I believe it was Tavares and Nyes. And the fact that Giroux does his backhand pass to Stützle and he gets an empty net, I'm like, I can't even believe that the one that Giroux was the first to the puck, and secondly, how they went about covering it. To me, it was just a really lack of effort. When I seen Giroux start to go around the net, I'm like, okay, they're not getting an empty net goal here. This is going to carry on. The Leafs are going to recover the puck, and they're going to go back down and try to score. And no, Timmy gets it in. I'm like, wow, that went in. I couldn't believe it. 3-0 sends. Brady Tkachuk adds another empty netter afterwards when they pull the goalie again. And, well, game over, game 6 back in Ottawa. Linus Ullmark picks up the shutout, who was dialed in and strong all night. He didn't have to be, I wouldn't say he was out of this world amazing. He was just really, really solid. The puck was sticking to him, good rebound control. But, overall, it's been a real fun series for sure. Obviously, the Leafs won the first 3. The Sens have won the next 2. Heading back to Ottawa, they'll see if they can force a game 7 or not. I know Leaf fans are probably starting to get a little nervous, rightfully so. Your team still has the lead. They still have another opportunity here to kind of exercise those closeout demons that they've been battling here for so long. Of course, tonight, like I said, we got Caps and Habs tonight. Capitals trying to finish off Montreal. 1-0 early. Lexi Protest is in the lineup for Washington. Taylor Radish is out. Florida and Tampa go tonight. They should be getting started right about now as well. 3-1 Panther lead. So they're trying to close out the Lightning. We'll see what happens there. Jets Blues go as the later game. It's a 2-2 series. Winnipeg heading back home, trying to see if they can find themselves after getting embarrassed back-to-back games in St. Louis. Of course, we had a signing today as well. One day after advancing to the next round of the Stanley Cup Finals, the Carolina Hurricanes today announced that they've signed Taylor Hall to a 3-year contract extension. We had heard towards the end of the regular season from NHL insiders that there was a mutual interest for them to extend Hall after picking him up earlier, closer to the trade deadline, and they were pretty close to getting a contract done. They've continued, obviously, negotiating off and on throughout the playoffs, and here we are. So it's 3 years, and it's $3.167 million. So really, it's a little less money than what he's used to making, but he's at a different stage of his career, not producing like he did, 8-10 years ago, but he's still able to contribute and be a good player, and they clearly think he's a good fit there. So it's not a bad contract, really, in my opinion, there as well. Now, Utah, we think there's been a leak to suggest what their new name is going to be, and the belief is it's the Utah Mammoth. Now, this comes from their actual Utah Hockey Club's YouTube page. Their obviously YouTube account where they obviously can post a lot of team videos and stuff, and their handle, because YouTube now has, I'm not sure if you ever notice or you even pay attention or care, but we have like handles on our YouTube channel, which is basically our username, and it was changed to Utah Mammoth. Now, nobody from the team is commenting. ESPN did reach out to their executive team looking for comments, and they did get one, but they're not really saying anything. They would not confirm or deny that was the name or that was done by mistake or anything of that nature. All they would say is that they are currently on track to have it announced and in place before next season like they had promised before. So this doesn't seem like an accident to me. It's kind of weird, but it looks like Mammoth is going to be the name, if that is anything to that. And just of all the things you could get for a leak, that it just seems like it can't be a coincidence. So we will see when it's officially announced, but it looks like that's going to be it. Now, sticking with Utah for a minute, they also announced today with the Delta Center a massive amount of upgrades that should be done in time for next season. They're going to be able to increase the capacity up to 17,000 for hockey. I think it's going to go to 18, I believe, 18 or 19 for basketball. They're going to have a new retractable seat system. They're lengthening the arena bowl by 12 feet on each end as well. And it's just there's going to have a lot more different, better sight lines and a lot of things in place for next year. So certainly will increase the fan experience when attending games for the NHL's newest franchise as well. There's also some speculation, and this is I'll just put this out there because I've seen some reputable reporters mention it. But there's some people that think right now that with the Lightning being on the ropes against the Panthers, there's a possibility that head coach John Cooper might actually end up being on the outs with the Lightning if they can't come back and make a deeper playoff run. Now, apparently, his contract, what originally, like his last longer-term deal, was set to expire at the end of this season, and he had signed an extension, but it was only for 1 year, which seems kind of weird. I mean, he's been there a long time. I don't know if he personally, at some point here in the near future, is going to want to change. Obviously, I'm sure he's quite comfortable. He's had a lot of success, so makes sense why the Lightning wouldn't look to get rid of him. But, all great things come to an end. At some point, you have to think a new voice couldn't hurt. The team hasn't had quite the level of success that they did when they were, winning Stanley Cups. I mean, it's not that long since they were winning back-to-back Cups, but it's been a little bit now. Is it time for a bit of a shakeup in Tampa, right? That's what some are wondering. And the belief is that that John Cooper apparently, and I haven't been able to verify this, but some reputable reporters are saying that he's got a good relationship already with Utah owner Ryan Smith. And given his level of success and his resume, that they may be trying to bring John Cooper to Utah to be their next coach. Now, I know Andre Tourigny's done a pretty good job. I haven't heard anything to suggest he's on the outs and that there's going to be an opening there. But sometimes you see cases of teams making a change only because somebody else became available and that they weren't necessarily going to do it unless they could get a certain guy. So that's going to be a scenario to watch. When Tampa is eliminated from the playoffs, we don't know when that's going to be. It could be tonight. We'll see, if there is going to be a change, I would suspect it would be not long after the season for them is over. If they do make a change, if that'll be like a bit of an effect there, domino effect, and see if they make a change in Utah. But I know Andre Tourigny, who they call Bear, has done a great job. He's been there for a few years. He's gone through some tough times. I would feel terrible if he lost his job, but I can understand, as much as you like him, it's hard to not want John Cooper to be your coach too, right? So we'll have to monitor that situation. Now, Hockey Canada has also announced their coaching staff for the upcoming World Championships, which will get underway here shortly in the month of May, of course, in Europe. Columbus Blue Jackets head coach Dean Evison will be the head coach for this year's version of that tournament. And Nashville Predators coach Andrew Burnett and Calgary Flames coach Ryan Huska will be the assistant coaches to Evison. So certainly a good group there to lead this year's version. There have been a few names mentioned so far for Canada's roster. I know Macklin Celebrini from San Jose is one of them. We haven't really heard a lot of other ones. The U.S. have put out some of their players. A lot of them are really young. I know Will Smith, Celebrini's teammates, going, and there are a bunch of other younger players around the league going too, but not a lot for veterans here announced or confirmed right now, but we'll learn a lot more about who's going to that tournament probably over the next few days or into next week, we'll say. Now, of course, we got some award finalists announced as well. Of course, we learned the Ted Lindsay finalist, which is voted on by the players for who is the league's most outstanding player. And the finalists are Nikita Kucherov, Nathan MacKinnon, and Cale Makar. Interesting to note that I thought Leon Draisaitl would be right up there, considering where he finished in a lot of league stats this year and what he did, especially with McDavid missing some time this year, and McDavid's numbers being, not quite up to McDavid's standards this year. I mean, he still had a phenomenal year, but considering what he's done in the past, it wasn't a 150-point season for him. Again, it's hard to imagine a 100-point season being considered a down year, and if you're Connor McDavid, it kind of is. But yeah, so it's just interesting. Obviously, that's what the players think. Be curious to see who the winner is. And the finalists for the Norris, which should surprise absolutely nobody unless you live on a rock, is Quinn Hughes of the Canucks, Cale Makar of the Avalanche, and Zach Werenski of the Blue Jackets. No big surprise on that one at all. Now, as I mentioned, we have a few other speculation, offseason kind of rumblings, if you will. One I want to talk about through real quick. The others will be a little bit more. A couple around Montreal. There's a lot of talk after Mike Sullivan got fired about Sidney Crosby's future in Pittsburgh. There were some people saying that Crosby wasn't happy with the news. I don't expect Crosby to put a big smile on his face and be thrilled. I mean, I know he was very close to Mike Sullivan and had a great working relationship with him for nearly a decade. Is he going to be happy that his coach that he loved working with isn't there anymore? No, of course he's not. Does that mean he's going to want to be ticked off enough to leave? It doesn't mean that either. So obviously there's a lot of people out there that would love to see Sidney Crosby leave the Penguins, even though it's widely believed it's his preference to play out the string and be a career lifelong Penguin. and retire of only playing with one franchise. At least that's what people close to Crosby have said, that's what he feels is most important, and that's what he wants. Now, could his mind change before it's all over? It's always possible. But knowing that he grew up being a Habs fan and seeing that the Habs are taking a step forward this year, getting into the playoffs, and obviously, big steps in the rebuild. Obviously fair to say that the rebuild's coming to an end here. Obviously they're not going to have a high pick this year. They do have the Flames pick as well from the Monahan trade, so they actually might get a pretty decent prospect, even though they're a playoff team this year. But obviously Montreal is going to be looking to do different things next year. They're fair to say they exceeded expectations this year, but I think that's going to probably ramp up expectations for next year and the next couple of years, and they want to see these young players probably take some more steps, and maybe there could be a change within some of the older leadership around them. All these teams that are taking steps. Look at Ottawa, another prime example. I think a big part of what helped them get where they were was they have all this young talent, but they brought in the right group of veterans who have won and been there, done that, and have that experience that they can learn from. Makes a huge difference. So clearly, if you're Montreal and you're looking at your roster and you're like, okay, you know what, we could probably use another centerman, and it'd be great if we had a veteran that would take the pressure off Nick Suzuki, kind of change what the matchups are for a lot of these guys, somebody they could learn from. Of course, who wouldn't want Sidney Crosby on your team? So this really just stems from Montreal radio talk, and it was a few different guys, I think including Marty Biron, talking about what it would take for Montreal to get Crosby. If they did make a trade, what would it cost? And it turns out that they figure it's going to take 3 first-round picks and a really good prospect like Michael Hayes or somebody. Would you do that? I mean, it's Sidney Crosby. It's hard not to. They have 2 first-rounders this year, So, and one of those is really a bonus first-rounder that you kind of got from the Calgary Flames. You kind of fleeced them, really. So, if you gave them both of those picks and say next year's first rounder, which you're hoping is not high because you're hoping you're going to continue to make the playoffs, and maybe you put protection on that pick for, if it's top 10, we can defer it a year, something like that. You get 3 first rounders, a good prospect. Would you do that? I would, because I think any team would greatly benefit from a guy like Sidney Crosby. He's playing at an extremely high level. And if you get a team like Ottawa, Montreal, or any of these teams that, your wildcard teams that are just kind of tipping your toe, getting in for the first time in a while, you add that kind of player to your roster, that's phenomenal. That's a phenomenal jump forward, right? So we have no reason to think Crosby wants to leave Pittsburgh. It's just a lot of people talking about it. It's really, like I said, it's more, if you see this out there and you see the talk, there really isn't any sources saying this is something that's going to be a thing or talked about. It's really just Montreal radio kind of dreaming, if you will. But it will be interesting at some point if we ever hear anything about Crosby's maybe changing his mind. That's just going to light a fire of rumors, but where he's going to go. And, Montreal is going to come up, except because of the fact he grew up a Habs fan, there's a connection with his dad and all that. A lot of people want to see him go to Colorado and play with his buddy Nate McKinnon too. So we'll see. I mean, we may be denied of all of that, and he may remain with the Penguins like he said all along. So we'll see. Another thing around Montreal, I've seen some articles suggesting whether or not they can move on from Patrick Laine in the offseason. Laine, of course, has been out of the last couple of playoff games. I know the Habs are calling it a bit of an injury. I'm not really convinced that it is. I really think that I could be wrong, because to be honest, he wasn't playing well. To me, he just looks slow. He disengaged. The same issues we've seen with Laine everywhere else he's played. You could argue that, you know what? He was a good fit as a power play specialist. But, how many shooting threats do you need on your power play? You need some playmakers in there too. They have that. They have Hudson. They have Suzuki. They have Demidov now, Slafkovsky. Obviously Caulfield is your main shooting threat usually. I don't know. I think you can afford to part with them if you can bring back another piece that would be a different kind of player that might help you make the team better. I mean, there's certainly some questions, I think, long-term in goal right now. I know Samuel Montembeault has definitely got things locked down as a starter. He really bona fide himself this year. But are they confident in Caden Primo? I don't think so. Are they confident in Dobush being a full-time backup next year? I don't know. So could there be a better backup tandem goalie to come in and work with Montembeault? Let those guys, either you let Primo go or your Dobush goes back to the minors. I don't know. I mean, that's just one quick thought that comes to mind. You're losing David Savard to retirement. You have lots of young D in your system, but maybe do you want another veteran to come in? Because obviously they have Carrier, I think when they brought Carrier in, I think they probably had in mind he's going to kind of replace Savard longer term as well. Savard's role's kind of gotten smaller. They still got Mathis in there. So, maybe you don't bring in a D. It's hard to say like where the holes are, but, with Laine, there's certainly some questionable, questions that can be asked about if this is the right player, the right fit, and whether or not his contract can be justified being on those books. So we'll see what happens. But there's already a lot of, articles out there floating around, some Habs writers wondering if that could be a move we see. Obviously, you got to wonder how Kirby Dach fits back in with this team as well. Obviously another player that's been out with injury. I mentioned before, I don't know if they're going to end up being able to trade him because, a lot of teams are going to be reluctant with the injury history he now has. But, he's another player that you either need to move or figure out working back into the mix next year. So curious to see how things play out there. And of course, Rick Tocchet, of course, we know left the Vancouver Canucks, isn't going to be returning. We learned a little bit more on the reasons why. And this really just comes from reporters, but Tocchet, of course, never really said anything like this directly himself. So a little bit of it is speculation, but it's believed to have been confirmed, behind the scenes by enough people that it's believed to be the case. But for one thing, is that Rick Tocchet was not leaving the Vancouver Canucks because of money. It's believed they offered him a contract somewhere around 5 times 5. That's a lot of money. He would have been one of the league's highest paid coaches. So you combine that with the fact that he had a really rough year. We know all the drama and everything that went on in Vancouver this year. A lot of this has to do with the direction of the team. Obviously, it was a really trying year. And then you throw in the fact that there's a lot of other openings right now. It doesn't mean that he's linked or wants to go to any specific team. It's just that, he's pretty confident that he could get one of the other open jobs and get a similar pay. And if it's not a perfect fit that he really loves, he could go back to TV and work with TNT next year. So he's not hurting for money. He's not hurting for opportunities. And after everything he's been through with this drama-filled organization over the past year, it's just time for a change. It had nothing to do with money. Now, largely, one of the things that reporters said, too, is that it really had to do a lot with the complete dysfunction in the organization, top to bottom. That goes right from the owner right down, to the front lines here. There's a lot of dysfunction in this organization, and, Aquilini is right at the head of it. It's believed that Rick Tocchet has never really been a fan of Elias Pettersson. Didn't take him long to determine after he arrived there and started coaching this team that he didn't think Pettersson was a player they could win with. They're obviously, with his practice habits, how he prepares, off-season training, he's not a fan. And I don't think he's convinced that Pettersson is a guy that can lead this team to a lot of success and that can really win with this guy. I honestly think if you had to ask him now, when it came down to Pettersson and Miller, what would you have rather seen the team do, that he would have preferred they keep Miller? I think it's pretty clear to me JT Miller is a lot more of a Rick Tocchet guy than Pettersson is. Now, there's a lot more to that, of course. It seemed like there was a lot more other team members that were impacted by this feud or whatever you want to call it, and it spilled over for sure. So it's not cut and dry, just that simple, but I think Rick Tocchet just kind of had enough. And really makes me wonder the future of this franchise. Like I said, if that coach didn't take him long to really kind of wear on or sour on Pettersson, if you will, what's the team going to do? And it's believed that before Pettersson signed that Tocchet was more on board with moving him. But ownership, of course, as they continue to meddle with this franchise and make it one of the worst run teams in the NHL, in my opinion, I feel bad for the fans. They've had some great teams, but that owner, to me, he meddles too much. And it certainly it's just poorly run. It's just that simple. And it was really their decision. Francisco Aquilini's decision that the team, they were told they needed to sign this guy. Hand over the money, get him signed. So they did. And then what happens? The feud with Miller really escalates. The feud with Miller was already there. It just wasn't as bad. They were trying to coexist. And then it just got worse from there. So I really do wonder what we're going to see out of this organization. I do seriously question whether or not we'll see a Pettersson trade. If the owner is that high on Petey, maybe he doesn't go. But they have to really analyze the situation now and be like, he's going to have a no-trade clause soon enough. Do we make this move beforehand? Because this team is going to be in trouble here soon, especially if they lose Quinn Hughes. And the belief is that why would New Jersey, because we know we've heard all the stuff and we've talked about it here, about Hughes playing with his brothers, why would the Devils trade for Quinn when they can sign him in 2 years? They would have to give up a lot of good talent, and they're going to become a worse team because of it. So to me, I don't see that happening. Now, or even if they do, they're not going to be willing to pay the price that would normally be paid for a guy like Quinn Hughes. And the Canucks are going to end up looking like getting a really crappy return. It's a lose-lose situation. It really is, and I feel horrible for that fan base because you've got these special players, and it's just, you thought the team was really taking off last year, and here we are a year removed, and it's like completely different story. It feels like it's imploding. Brock Besser's probably not coming back. We know Rick Tocchet's not coming back. You seriously wonder if you can win with PD now after the last year plus is gone. You're now concerned you're going to lose one of the top players in the league and your captain, Quinn Hughes. I don't know if there's much hope. It's hard not to be pessimistic about the Canucks right now. So I hope I'm wrong, and I hope things change for the better, but it's not looking good out there. So we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.